Hello, Genies, and welcome to part 2 of Resources for Researching Your War of 1812 Ancestors online. I'm Elizabeth Swanee O'Neill, a professional genealogist based in California, and I'm thrilled to be with you today at the 2022 Roots Tech Connect conference. The War of 1812 may be a forgotten war for some, but many valuable genealogical resources were created as a result of this conflict. Could your ancestor have been involved in America's Second Revolutionary War? Before we go on, I just have a quick reminder that the content of this video, as well as the thoughts, views, and opinions expressed herein, belong solely to the creator, that's me, and do not necessarily reflect the views of Family Search International and Roots Tech. So this is part 2 of a 2-part session. In part 1, we talked about how to identify an ancestor who may have served in the War of 1812, as well as how to locate his service record. In this session, we're going to talk about War of 1812 pension records, and then discuss some resources to help you fill out your ancestor's military story by researching his regiment. So let's go. All right, so let's dive into War of 1812 pension records. 2 acts provided for War of 1812 veterans' pensions. The Act of February 14, 1871, granted pensions to surviving soldiers and sailors who had served 60 days in the War of 1812 and had been honorably discharged, or to those who had been personally named in any resolution by Congress for specific service of less than 60 days. The widows of such soldiers and sailors were eligible for pension, provided the marriage had taken place before the Treaty of Peace was ratified on February 17, 1815. The Act of March 9, 1878, provided pensions for surviving soldiers and sailors of the War of 1812 who had served for 14 days or in any engagement and had been honorably discharged, and for their surviving widows. It made no provision regarding the date of marriage. Pensions could have been granted to the veteran, his widow, or his heirs. A veteran's pension file typically includes his rank, place of residence, age or date of birth, and time of service. A widow's application usually includes her place of residence, her maiden name, date and place of marriage, circumstances of her husband's death, and the names of children under the age 16. You might be able to find your ancestor listed in the 1840 Census of Pensioners for Revolutionary and Military Services. This census includes the veterans' names, ages, and places of residence, as returned by the marshals of several judicial districts under the Act for taking the 6th census. You can find this document in PDF format on the census.gov website. There are 2 indexes for War of 1812 pensions available online. Family Search's United States War of 1812 Index to Pension Application Files 1812 to 1910, and Ancestry's War of 1812 Pension Application Files Index 1812 to 1815. Since both databases do the same thing, let's take a look at Family Search, since that one is free to use. This database includes a name index and images of the jacket envelope that contains the pension application files located in the National Archives. The envelope provides the soldier's name and military service information, as well as the widow's name and pension and bounty land numbers. The files cover the years from 1812 to 1910 and are arranged alphabetically by the veteran's name. The images in this database are the face side of the file jackets. So here's a sample of one of the records in this database. Here you see that Jesse Blanton's widow applied for a pension based on Jesse's service in Captain Irvine's North Carolina militia. If you find that your ancestor did receive a pension, then you'll want to head over to Fold 3 to retrieve the rest of the file. Fold 3's War of 1812 pension files are free for anyone to access, even without a subscription. Digitization of this project is currently 82% complete, so it still isn't completely finished. Fold 3 has scanned copies of the entire pension file, which means color photos of the documents and not black and white images from microfilm. What you find in 1812 pension files can really vary from file to file. So here are a couple sample pages from Jessie Blanton's widow, Lyda's pension request. On the left is the jacket that contained the files, and on the right is the widow's brief, or the application for the widow's pension. In the application, we get information about Jessie's service, including his service dates and length of service, Lyda's current residence location, and the status of the pension. Unfortunately, Lyda's pension request was rejected because her husband's service during that time period was after the Treaty of Peace was signed, but before the end of the actual war. So here are a couple of more documents from pension files. The first document is another one from Jessie Blanton's widow's file. This is her sworn deposition, which contains information about Jessie's service, their marriage, including Lyda's maiden name, and the date of Jessie's death. On the right is from a different pension file, Thomas Bland, and this is a copy of his marriage record to Dorcas Combs in 1852. So as you can see, 1812 pension files can really be a gold mine of family history information. So you definitely don't want to miss getting a copy of your Ancestor's file. And remember, 1812 pension files will always be free on Fold 3. Your War of 1812 research won't be complete without doing some research into your ancestors' regiment. To better understand your ancestor's military experience, you want to find out what happened to the regiment in which he served. For example, where did his regiment travel? Which battles did they participate in? Were they captured and taken prisoner? And a great way to visualize these details is with maps. So let's start by looking at maps from the Library of Congress's War of 1812 collection. The collection is searchable by date, location, collection contributor, and subject. And here is a lovely example. It's a pen and ink, pencil and watercolor map of the seat of war at New Orleans, dated 1815. It shows the advance of British troops in New Orleans from December 21st, 1814 to January 8th, 1815. Another example, this is a sketch map of the Battle of Horseshoe Bend at Tallapoosa River, dated March 27, 1814, by R.H. McEwen. Explore the War of 1812 is an interactive map of War of 1812 sites in the United States and Canada. You can take a tour of the sites by browsing the images along the bottom of the screen, or by clicking on one of the map pins to bring up information about that location. This one is for the USS Constitution National Historic Park in Boston, Massachusetts. The USS Constitution is the world's oldest commissioned warship and the namesake for my chapter of the National Society United States Daughters of 1812. Did you know that the Virgin Islands were involved in the War of 1812? Neither did I until I started browsing this website. This entry about the Virgin Islands National Park explains how British troops seized and occupied forts on Hassel Island and how the harbor was crucial in protecting Caribbean trade during the war. This is a really interesting website to browse, and I love how it puts the battle and historical locations in perspective on the map. The Battle Archives website was founded in 2017, and it offers maps for many of the world's iconic battles, including the War of 1812. This site is a bit tough to navigate if you're looking for War of 1812 maps, so be sure to use the direct link in your handout. While the main purpose of this site is to sell high-quality maps, you can still view them online in detail on the website. Map images on this website include a watermark, but if you purchase a hard copy of the map, there won't be a watermark, of course. This map is of the Battle of New Orleans, which was fought from 14 December 1814 to 18 January 1815, with the decisive engagement on 8 January 1815. The Treaty of Ghent, which ended the war, was signed on 24 December 1814, but the news did not arrive until after the British withdrew and the battle was won by the Americans. You might note that along the right side, the cartographer got the date wrong. They show that the decisive battle had taken place on January 8, 1814, when in fact it was January 8, 1815. This is a British-made map of the Battle of Bladensburg, which took place outside of Washington, D.C. in Maryland on August 24, 1814. The British Army completely routed the American forces, allowing the British to march on Washington and burn the town. The British had more casualties during this battle, but since the Americans fled the field, the British were able to march virtually unopposed into the capital. Finally, the Lilly Library at the Indiana University in Bloomington has a really interesting collection of maps from the War of 1812. I love this website because there are so many interesting maps and documents to browse through. When you land on the main page, you'll see a selection of maps to choose from. There's also an amazing collection of documents arranged by year, as well as from before and after the war. This map shows the British possessions in North America and is dated 1814. It's an outline color map centered around Hudson's Bay and shows the waterways, state and provincial boundaries, towns, and fur trading posts. And from the documents collection, we have this announcement of great news, defeat of the British at New Orleans. This came from Hudson, New York, dated February 8, 1815, and noted, "The riflemen of Tennessee and Kentucky have mowed down like grass the ranks of the ferocious islanders." Perhaps your ancestor was present at that battle. Was your ancestor imprisoned during the War of 1812? You may be able to find the answer online. Try searching Ancestry's War of 1812 Prisoner of War Records 1812 to 1815. Records in this collection include lists of prisoners, accounts of clothing provided U.S. agents to prisoners held in Canada, lists of soldiers captured at a certain place or in a certain battle, lists of prisoners held at a certain place, lists of prisoners who died in captivity, and lists of men exchanged and correspondence. In addition to the actual records and manuscripts, this database also contains a set of index cards which list soldiers' names and the manuscript numbers of the records in which they appear. These index cards are arranged in alphabetical order according to surname and are useful for locating individuals in actual records. Most of the records are pertaining to American soldiers, but there are some records for civilians as well as for British soldiers. In addition to the soldier's name, his rank, company, and regiment may also be listed on the record. And here we have the results for a Frederick Smith who served in the 16th Regiment U.S. Infantry. You have the option of viewing the index cards or viewing the manuscript image. You'll want to make sure that you view them both. So here we have the image of the two index cards. As you can see, there are two cards for Frederick Smith with two different manuscripts referenced on the cards. This is because the images were made two at a time, and this one includes cards for different men of the same name. You'll want to be sure you've got the correct image for your ancestor. In this case, we want Frederick Smith referenced in manuscript number 77. And here is the image for our Frederick Smith in manuscript 77. This is an account of clothing provided U.S. agents to prisoners held in Canada. And here's another example of what you may find in this database. This is a list of prisoners taken at the surrender of Detroit, dated June 16, 1813. Another database to check at Ancestry is Canada Registers of Prisoners of War 1803 to 1815. Records in this database come from a time when the Royal Navy established its rule of the seas during the wars surrounding the French Revolution, the Napoleonic Wars, and the War of 1812 in America. Most of these records are registers of prisoners taken between 1812 and 1815 and held in Canada. They include prisoners of war from all services held by the British, British prisoners held in enemy custody, and prisoner exchanges. You may find French, American, and British citizens among the prisoners. This image is from the Register of Parole Prisoners at Halifax, Nova Scotia, French and American. And this one is from the Registers of Prisoners of War, Halifax Exchanges, 1812 to 1815. And you can see that the British and Americans are listed separately in this list. Bruce Felknor's website, American Merchant Marine at War, contains a page called A Privateersman's Letters Home from Prison. The privateer was Perez Drinkwater, a lieutenant of the privateer schooner Lucy, when he was captured by the British Navy brig Billericay in the last days of 1813. He was landed with the rest of his crew in the southwest of England, and he wrote to his brother Elbridge Drinkwater at home. In the first letter, 5 months into Perez's imprisonment, it's obvious that the experience has done nothing to sweeten his disposition toward his captors. In one part, he said, "We have plenty of creepers," which were insects like bedbugs and lice, "here to turn us out in the morning. Them and the Englishmen together don't let us have much peace day nor night, for they are both enemies to us, and likewise to peace, and the more they can torment the human race, the better they are pleased." Now, even if Lieutenant Drinkwater wasn't your ancestor, these letters are a great read to learn about the conditions in a British War of 1812 prison, or at least what Lieutenant Drinkwater thought of those conditions. There are still a few surviving casualty reports from the War of 1812. The Family Search Wiki has links to a couple of these on their U.S. War of 1812 Casualty Records page. The Historical Register and Dictionary of the U.S. Army by Francis B. Heitman lists regular Army and volunteer officers from 1789 to 1903 in 2 volumes, giving a brief history of the officers' service and awards received. Links to various parts of these books can be found by clicking the link on this page and then clicking the external links provided on the next page to visit sites with that information. Another possibility is Ancestry's U.S. returns of killed and wounded in battles 1790 to 1844. Now, this collection, created in 1850 to 51 by Lieutenant Colonel J.H. Eaton of the 3rd Infantry, is a compilation of returns of soldiers and sailors killed and wounded in engagements that took place between 1790 and 1848. Another partial copy, prepared in 1896 by the Record and Pension Office of the War Department, covers the years 1790 to 1842 and is also included. In this example, we see a few of those killed or wounded of the Tennessee militia commanded by Major General Andrew Jackson in an engagement with the Creek Indians at Fort Talladega on November 8, 1813. Also at Ancestry is the database U.S. Navy Casualties Books, 1776 to 1941. This database contains a number of books documenting naval history, stretching back to the U.S. Navy's early days. Most of these are casualty lists that include details on sailors and officers who were killed, wounded, missing in action, or taken prisoner. But not all deaths are war-related. Records also include lists of personnel who were drowned, were lost in shipwrecks, or died from other accidents or misadventure. In this example, we see a partial listing of sailors from the USS Scourge, an American warship converted from a confiscated Canadian merchant schooner, and the American warship Hamilton. The 2 ships foundered during a squall on Lake Ontario at 2 o'clock in the morning on Sunday, August 8, 1813, during the War of 1812. About 84 men perished when the Hamilton and the Scourge sank. So this concludes part 2 of Resources for Researching Your War of 1812 Ancestor online. Hopefully I've inspired you to take the time to research a War of 1812 veteran in your family tree and take the next steps to write his story or maybe join a lineage society to honor his service. Thank you very much.